Yeah, I think especially let's just get into Divine Feminine already. That was the next one, the first one that he that we're releasing after Good AM. And man, right off the bat with congratulations, it's like, okay, this is a Mac that I haven't seen necessarily before. Like this beautiful piano intro, obviously the theme, Divine Feminine, is right there off the bat. I love the "Where Are You?" and then the Divine Feminine, just the intro of the song, and then the theme in the song itself. He's like he's okay with waiting, waiting for this Divine Feminine, this girl, allowing her to come to him, allowing her the time to come to him, and that's just like a Mac that we haven't necessarily seen before, especially with like the song, the more somber songs.
Yeah, and Divine Feminine, I think, was a really interesting, almost like stamp to the love song for Mac, because if you look at the love songs that he's had already, they're all kind of the same ilk, where they're like, I know that I'm not good at this, but I'm trying.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you look at the first like three or four songs, well, the first three songs especially, you kind of get that vibe where he's admitting like he knows that he's messing up, and like a lot of times he's trying to like keep the girl before she leaves. And but he's trying. Like he knows what that divine feminine spirit can do for him, and like he sees it, but he just still isn't able to completely be perfect. And
Mm-hmm.
I think perfection is also kind of another theme that swimming, I think we'll talk about more, but something that he's talked about a lot, like chasing perfection. So I almost think that a lot of his music is just almost him negotiating with himself, like
Yeah.
whether he's doing the right thing or not. And it's interesting when you come at it from that perspective. Like I think it kind of changes how you see the music a little bit. But I think,
Especially, go
yeah,
ahead.
go.
I was gonna say you definitely see that in swimming, and I know I don't want to talk about swimming a lot, but if you look at that perspective of Mac is kind of not necessarily putting music out for himself, for other people, but he's more. It's a conversation with himself. You definitely kind of are able to see a different angle into it.
Yeah, exactly. And I again, we'll get to swimming in circles. Obviously the circles is it's I'm not going to get into it. We got a whole
Yeah,
week on it, but
yeah,
like, but there's you can just tell if listening to the music. We've listened to basically his entire discography at this point, and you can see a buildup.
hmm
And I think swimming is like that right before you get to the peak moment. Um, but the divine feminine plays an important role too, again, because I think he's it's obviously a themed album. It's about the divine feminine, like the female spirit, basically, and all that comes with that. And like this, I noticed a pretty significant line between the beginning of this album and like the second half. We can discuss structure a little bit more later on, but these beginning few songs, like I said, you can see him kind of he realizes what he wants, but it's like almost he doesn't know how to have it or how to keep it. And I think congratulations is a good start for that, but really the first three songs are kind of the same theme.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think when we talk about album structure, the first album. I mean, we listen to watching movies with the sound off, where it's like, yeah, okay, he could take you on a roller coaster, but I feel like this is the first album, and obviously Swimming, where I'm like, okay, this guy is a fucking master at putting together an album, keeping the audience attention right off the bat, and never losing a grip. And we talked about pre-pod and like kind of throughout the week how Mac, he's developed this throughout his time, writing and producing. But I think him being so dedicated into the production aspect really shows in this one, especially when you get to the second song, Dang, which is like a great tempo switch up, great transition, and a funky and bouncy beat. And again, like you said, it's more of a sensitive look into Mac and Anderson .Paak's approach to women. And I think Paak really complements the song really well. And we haven't really talked about that, how good Mac Miller is with features necessarily. I think Boggs mentioned it last pod, but I think this song, it's a really good combination of them both, with Mac's kind of flow and then the easygoing delivery of Anderson .Paak.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. I just put that together. That I just was talking about Blank Face, who Anderson .Paak played a pretty big role in that too.
Yeah.
Anderson .Paak, very underrated, man. Like, his voice is very unique. You could slide him into any hip hop album. I think it's going to be great. But yeah, I mean, I agree. This, like, as you mentioned, Congratulations. It's a nice, like, light piano, kind of nudges you in a little bit to the sound in the album. And then Dang is a major switch up where it's a lot more, high tempo, and it's more of like a fun listen, and it's more produced. I mean, Congratulations was just a piano, there was really nothing else to it. And this is a lot more produced, and it's a nice switch up, and it's something we've talked about throughout this entire time of doing this pod, is like the roller coaster, the roller coaster of sound, and every good artist does it. Every good artist does it in a different way. But the way Mac Miller does it is different than the way J. Cole's going to do it, or Sturgill Simpson. So it's interesting. The more we do this, you can see similarities but differences as well. But yeah, like as I mentioned, this is another song about kind of trying to keep hold of what he wants and what he thinks he has, but he may not necessarily have it. I mean, the whole post chorus is "Can't keep losing you." And there's a line about losing the only people that know you best, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think, like I said, this first little trio of songs, I think you get a similar vibe of like he knows he can like see what he wants, but he just doesn't know how to hold on to it.
Yeah, and definitely Stay is like a perfect example of that as well. But what I wanted to mention is, again, the switch up. I think what Mac does better than a lot of the other artists we covered is his instrumentals are so strong, I feel like. And you really get that right off the bat after Dang, and then Stay with the trumpet, man. You hear that trumpet and you're just like, oh, wow. And then something about the full production, like he's able to add subtle things in there that really makes the song kind of stick. And it's like the thing that I picked up from this song is like the "will you" in the background, and then obviously it's a bump, and it continues the approach that you were talking about. And it's kind of like this. Here's a note I had on it. It's like a simp, but it's not, because it's Mac Miller. So that's kind of the vibe that I got with that one.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't maybe Mac Miller simp proof. That is something that maybe we have to discuss that a little bit further. But yeah, I agree with that, and it's funny. I tried to watch all the music videos for these two albums, and I just didn't have the time to do it. I've watched a lot of them in the past already, but I watched this one, Stay, and it's funny because we've talked about his music videos. He's so different. I mean, a lot of times he'll do like these really interesting music videos that are kind of, off the wall maybe a little bit. This one, he was just like on a beach with a little drone following him around like that.
Yeah.
He was just singing to the sky on the beach, and it seems like it was kind of nothing, but it almost, I think, paints a picture for this album and the next, where he's kind of just like off on his own doing his thing,
Yeah.
and that's a theme that he mixes in more to swimming, obviously, but maybe it had no, like, maybe there was really no meaning behind it, but it kind of felt like that to me, where he was just kind of like singing to the sky, and like that kind of feels like the Mac Miller experience a little bit.
Yeah, it's like it's just this true Mac, especially with this song too. It's like, will you stay? I feel like, he didn't want to get extra with any of it. He just wanted to keep it true. And you saw that in the beginning of the music video. The drone is like on the ground. He's on his phone. I feel like he hits play on like Apple Music, puts his phone in his pocket, and then starts bumping around. The drone flies up, and it's just like Mac just moving, and that is so true to Mac, honestly, and that provides a good representation of who he is, and especially as you mentioned in these later albums. But then we get into Skin, which has one of my favorite lines on the whole album, where he's like, "I've been making all these fucking songs, and now I'm gonna make a fucking song," and it is a fucking song, man. It is a fucking song. The transition theme again, masterfully done from Stay. It really, really, really is. You got the women moaning to start it off, just to give you the vibe. You know what it's gonna be. And then you got these smooth, slow, hard-hitting drums, dude, and it feels like fucking sex. And again, with the instrumentals, the background horn is fucking phenomenal. And like at this point, Mac knows how to carry a theme. That is so obvious. That is so obvious, and that's the thing that I really got from this album. It's like, okay, it's not even Good AM. Like, okay, there was a theme necessarily, but it still went a lot of back and forth. But on this album and Swimming, definitely, you're like, okay, here's what he's fucking talking about, and he kind of keeps it throughout the whole album. So what'd you have about this one, Hughes?
Yeah, I think this was a really good representation of what this album was to me. We talk a lot about sex on this podcast because that's like a common theme between a lot of the guys we talk about. The difference is when Schoolboy Q and J. Cole talk about having sex, they're college kids or college age kids that can do what they want, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what their version of sex was that. And obviously, they grew out of that type of music, but this whole album really is like the more romantic side of sex.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about, oh, it's a sex song, it's like, it's not a bad thing, which I think in the past we've kind of said that because a lot of those songs didn't really actually have like a meaning. It was just like fucking whoever you want. And this song I think is a good representation of the romantic side of sex and like the kind of the real side where there's a lot more to it. And I think Skin is a really nice song because he talks about being comfortable in your own skin, right? He's like, here's like, here we're just super freaks, but we're fine. Like that's who we are, and let's be that together. And I think it kind of set the tone for the rest of the album because that's like the most dedicated song to sex in the whole album. But I think it did a good job of kind of setting that tone that it's like, we're going to talk about sex and like, it's okay because this is something that we all do. It's something we all need to do, to move forward as humanity. And like, let's romanticize it a little bit.
Yeah, you're right. You made a good point, and I think he kind of talks about that in the initial song a little bit too, with love, 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 sex. He's making that comparison. It's like he's talking about sex, like not like I'm gonna fuck your bitch. I can fuck any bitch I want sex. It's like I am gonna make love to you. I'm gonna open those legs and go straight to your heart. And that was a line in this song. And then Cinderella. I mean, wow, dude, Cinderella. That wasn't one of the first songs that I was like really blown away with. But the more I listened to the album as a whole, I mean, like if there was a puzzle piece that fit perfectly into this album, I think it's this one. And the Ty Dolla feature is phenomenal. And Ty Dolla, I don't know if I'm gonna listen to the whole Ty Dolla album, but whenever I see a feature, he seems to come through. He seems to provide. Something that I do want to mention about this song, supposedly the only one about Ariana Grande, supposedly. However, the only reason I mention that is because she is a big influence, obviously, at this point in his career. And then as we move forward into Swimming, we're going to see just how big of an influence she is as well. But again, with the instrumental on this one, right off the bat, strings, a nice switch up from the slower Skin, and then build up from the drums. And then I love the line, take my hand, follow, or take your hand, follow me to my room. Like that just rings in my ears every time I listen to this song.
This was actually the song that got me into Mac Miller.
Okay.
I was working at Walmart, must have been 3 years ago, and I worked with a guy that he really helped get me into different kinds of music. He is just like a music head, and I was like, I don't want to say I was just a mainstream guy, but I definitely listened to more of like I was Drake, Future, Young Thug. Like
Yeah.
that was my trio, you know, like that was who I listened to. And he kind of helped open my eyes a little bit to different guys. And, you know, as I've talked about already, I didn't really listen to Mac until later in his career. And Swimming was like the first full album I listened to. But this guy was a huge Mac Miller fan. He told me, he's like, you got to listen to this song Cinderella. It's like 8 minutes, Ty Dolla Sign. Like it's just a really great song, and it's pretty clearly about Ariana Grande, although like
Hmm.
it's not explicitly said. But I listened to it and I'm like, God damn, man.
Hmm.
Like it's been in my playlist ever since. And I didn't come around to listening to the full album until later on, but I mean that song really grabbed me, and I think that was kind of a good marker for like where Mac was going. And I didn't have the context to see the stuff that he made before that, obviously, but I'm like, if this guy can make music like this, then I'm very interested in him.
Yeah.
And it's God, I think I've talked about this before, but I love like long songs. If you can make a song that's over 6 minutes that's like really good, it's just like a masterpiece. Like those are my
Yeah.
favorite songs. If
Yeah.
you can make a song that's that long and keep my attention, that's really impressive. And this is 8 minutes. Eight
Hmm.
minutes. That is
Hmm.
not a short song at all. The whole album is 50 minutes, if that gives you any context. So this song it will probably always be my favorite song from this album just because of like the symbolism of it this was like the song that really got me into Mac. But I think this song really encapsulates like the whole album,
Yeah.
because this album is about the divine feminine. Like this song to me showcases what the divine feminine means in all forms. Like the sex, the love, like all the stuff that's intertwined in like that divine feminine spirit. I think they both, Mac and Ty Dolla Sign, kind of do a really nice job of displaying in this song.
Yeah, I completely agree. And within the context of the album, I think, like I said, it's just that perfect puzzle piece because you still got this up tempo kind of vibe going, and then you're hit with this guitar solo that kind of splits the song, and that's what I found with Mac, especially in these two albums, that he really just does so well. Self Care being another example of kind of like splitting a song in two, but keeping it together and making it kind of just go so well. But the guitar solo, and then this switch to the slide piano with Mac, a more somber delivery. I got and one of the biggest lines I think that I took from this whole album, at least from Mac's kind of perspective, is in this. And it's like, I got angels, no Satan. And especially when we look into Swimming, man, like, is that not just like flipped? Is that not just flipped? And that's why I've been so down bad this whole week, because I'm like, my God, man, like Mac had it figured out. Mac had what he wanted. And obviously this girl was a big impact on that. And then he also mentions like when the weather's not rain. And it's like, all we've heard from Mac, especially after he's gotten out of the phase, the frat rap kind of phase of his career, where he's like, man, like I'm just the best, and he's on that grind. It's kind of been, the downside of Mac up until this point, and now this album, and in this moment in the album, you're like, man, he's got it. He's got angels, not Satan. And then we're gonna talk about Swimming more, but obviously that kind of flips. And then we got Planet Goddamn, which brings the tempo back up after the probably 2 to 3 minute or 2 minute kind of slower part of the song. Um, and it is a different kind of look into a girl, right? Compared to the first half of the album, it's a different kind of perspective coming from Mac. So what'd you have about this one, Hughes?
Yeah, I thought this one grabbed me right away because the first line, yeah, I think I'm stuck inside nostalgia. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, don't do it to him, Mac. Don't do it
Mm-hmm.
to him, because I think a familiar feeling for a lot of us men that happen to have active brains,
Mm-hmm.
where you start to think back to, some of those older times when something may have felt right, and you kind of keep trying to hold on to that. And again, I think that was something that he portrayed in this whole album. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of more about holding on to something that he wants and that he thought he had, and not necessarily being able to hold grasp of it.
And then we get into Soulmate, which the Goodwill Hunting um intro, man, like my lord. And this obviously the first time I heard it, it like took me for grabs because the first line it says my name. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, what's going on here? I'm like, what's going on here? Is this a universe? Is this like, am I being spoken to directly by the universe? But again, Mac has, we saw this in like Faces, but he has obviously, and he loves movies, right? And he loves kind of introducing that part of himself into his album. And this just sets up the song so well. Do you feel like you're alone, Will? Do you have a soulmate, someone that challenges you? And then you kind of get this drop with the drums and the bass, and he's like, yeah, are you my soulmate? And I'm like, damn, just another look into Mac's kind of perspective about the divine feminine, the questioning. It's like, you know is it like, are you my soulmate? Is this the one that I'm supposed to be with? And that's just kind of classic Mac, no matter the topic.
Yeah, this one was interesting for me because I love Goodwill Hunting, and that was a really nice placement, I think. And we're just reading through the lines. I'm like, oh, like that's Robin Williams in that movie does such a great job of like almost portraying like the divine feminine, like the way he talks about his dead wife, like Will asks him, "Are you going to get remarried?" And he says, "My wife's dead."
Mm-hmm.
Like he had his soulmate, she's gone, and there's nothing else that will replace that. Like I almost want to go back and watch that movie again after hearing
Absolutely.
that, because
Absolutely.
God, there's a lot of great lessons inside that movie, and that's why it's stuck around to this day as a lot of people's favorite movies are one of them. But yeah, I think to me this song is like the representation of divine love. This is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
He talks a lot about obviously the negatives from his point of view and some of the mistakes he's made, but this one to me is like the perfect kind of showcase of divine love and like what it is and what it can feel like. And obviously it's something that you can tell he's chasing, and it's something that it's like really looking at this album as a whole. It's like I think he feels like this is what's going to save him,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why going into swimming is so tragic. But this album as a whole, and Cinderella too, I think you start to see like almost the rays of sunshine kind of finally breaking through the treetops. It's
Absolutely.
like it feels so dark for so long, and it's like finally like I can see lights.
Yeah.
There's finally light shining down on me, and this album as a whole really just kind of gives you that good feeling of hope.
Yeah. And it's the production, but I also feel like it's Mac's energy with his delivery, which in swimming, kind of, we just keep bringing it up, but it's such two good albums just to kind of go back and forth with, because it's such a different Mac. And it's interesting because the production is kind of similar, but his energy on the delivery and in the lyrics, I just don't feel like is completely there in the later half of this podcast of what we're going to talk about. But you're right. In this song, it's like Mac talks about what he's been looking for the whole time, what he wants. And then it's like he kind of has it and he's like questioning. It's like, why do you do this? Why do you make all my, why, like, why do you love me so much? It's almost like he's like questioning. And that's why I think that the theme and the Robin Williams intro kind of fits so well too, because it's like, do you have someone that challenges you? Do you have someone that, is going to stay there through thick and thin? And it seems like up until this point, Mac kind of does. And so moving on to the next song, we got um, and we got CeeLo Green, which that's always a decent vibe, kind of like a Anderson .Paak, just a good soulful addition to the album, which I think Ty Dolla adds pretty well as well. But it's like you do kind of get this R&B soulful aspect to Mac Miller throughout this whole album, and I think We is a pretty good example of that.
Dude, I love CeeLo Green. I fucking love him. He is like one of my favorite voices ever. I mean, he can do any kind of song. Like this is a more low key song where like he's, you know, kind of just sticking to the sound and being more low key. But that dude has some pipes, man. Like that dude can get up there, and like he's one of my favorites. And I mean, he got pretty big, but I almost wish he got bigger because I don't feel like he was properly rewarded for his talent. But he was great on this song, and this is another song that I just constantly bump. It's been on the playlist for years. It's just a really nice like vibe, you know. It's I mean, early on, it's just kind of, you know, you could be my ooh, like it just feels really good to listen to.
You could be my. It is just like a vibe, isn't it? It's just like a bump too.
Yeah, and you know, I think the second verse I was reading through last night, you know, as I do with my listen throughs, I'll read through the lyrics at the same time. And I'm like, gosh, man. He says, you know, yeah, okay, and time will tell if I'm alive and well. Because when I'm by myself, I find that I keep flying high. Sometimes I must remind myself that change is more than pennies laying on the floor inside the well. I'm like, oh my God. Like, you know, this is where he's talking about what is he like when he's alone, and that's kind of like a theme in swimming. So it's a good, you know, semi transition point into swimming where he's talking about, you know, when he's by himself, like he's getting high and he knows he has to change, but like he has to actually take that action. And just that little section, I'm like, oh, here we go. Because I was gonna put swimming on a couple, you know, we just got a couple songs left. I'm like, here we go, like buckle in. Because I think this is kind of where we start to see the point where he's starting to almost hint at like what's coming next.
Yeah. But still, like, I feel like the vibe is still like kind of up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a subtle, like I'm still kind of struggling. But in the end of the song, I love the end where CeeLo is like, you got to deal with Mac Miller, bitch. And it's like that. I feel like that kind of encapsulates the vibe of the album, this one specifically, because it's like Max kind of feeling better than he has in a while. It seems like. And then you get into my favorite part with Ariana Grande. Super important song on this album, obviously, because I think most of the album might be directed a little bit towards her. But just another bounce. And like this, I kind of want to describe this as a radio song, but it fits it is to an extent, but Mac's delivery in this is just really, really kind of groovy, you know, and that it kind of sticks with the R&B kind of theme. And you know, with Ariana, it just kind of brings the album together a bit, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and I'm actually looking because I just realized there's a bass in this, and I was wondering if that was Thundercat because Thundercat plays a big role in swimming. I don't see if he was or not, but you know, it's definitely like a different sounding song from I think the rest of the album. And as you kind of mentioned earlier, there's some swings in production. Like he tries a lot of different sounds out, and they all sound great. Which is something we talked about earlier in his career. He would kind of, I think, strike out on maybe some sound things. But right now, he's really fine-tuned the sound, and he's really figured out, like, he can go for just like a normal, you know, rap beat, or he can go for something more melodic, kind of more instrument-based, and he's figured out how to make it all work. So I think this album is a good example as a whole of where he is sonically, that he's really made a lot of leaps.
Yeah, and he's comfortable doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is another one where I think watching the videos gives you some extra context. He has, I don't know where this performance was, but he has this video on his YouTube channel of him and Ariana performing together. And it almost breaks your heart watching it because you can just tell like the connection they had when they're on stage together.
Yeah.
Just the way they look at each other, it's like God, it like gives you so much hope for yourself, but then you realize like that they had it and it's gone. It's like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe that they had that and they lost it, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean this is like just a beautiful song though about, you know, kind of the how clueless she is to like how beautiful she is and like what she means to him. It's like she doesn't even know, but
Hmm.
like she changed his whole life. And I think again, I think that feeds perfectly into the theme of this album.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's like the duet. I mean, they did My Way, or I Love the Way You Make Me Feel a Little Bit, but this is kind of like that. They're together. This is their duet. And you're right. There's obviously a connection there. And it kind of takes me to one of the lines, I think, in the first song on Swimming. And it's like, or one of the songs where it's like, whether it's never or forever, it's all the same. And that just, again, this album put in context with his whole career, knowing the situation, just really seems like a high note, really does. And it makes it kind of the rest of it all a little sad, like truly sad. And that's why I think I got down bad, because I haven't listened to Swimming yet, but we still got one more song. Got a Kendrick Lamar feature. We got a Kendrick Lamar feature, and we talked about the connection between kind of like the Schoolboy TDE vibes, and this is a vibe too. It still got that R&B kind of funk to it. And Kendrick just adds a perfect kind of little stamp to the end of the album.
Yeah, I like this one a lot too. And the first time you listen to it, it's like, what the hell? Kendrick Lamar.
Hmm.
Where does Kendrick Lamar fit in a love album?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it was it's interesting, but like I think it works well. I think
Hmm.
his voice really fits in nicely. And I just kind of like the idea of this song that it's like God is fair. Like whatever we do in that bedroom, like he gets it. You know,
Yeah.
that's kind of what I took away. That it's like he'll understand. Like we're not necessarily following his ways, but he gets it. That's kind of what I liked from this album. And again, it's a different sound. Like there's really not a ton of consistency in sound. I think it bounces around a lot, but it doesn't feel like it's overwhelming. I think
Yeah.
it all meshes together perfectly.
Yeah, and then the outro of the album as a whole, again, just another example of how Mac is able to just make the theme just kind of, explode. And so the outro is Mac's grandmother kind of talking about his love affair, her love affair with his husband, his grandfather. And it's like, man, that's what this album's all about. And another thing I do want to kind of mention is I saw an interview with Mac Miller talking about this album, and he's like, yeah, it's about the divine feminine, of course, but it's also about like his relationship with the universe. And that's a really good look into how Mac's feeling at this point in his career. And I think it's a really interesting kind of comparison to make, because it's like he mentioned he was like attempting to treat the universe like he would this girl that he's in love with. And obviously at this point it's kind of like paying off for him, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I love this outro as well. Like I think I probably skipped over it in past times because it's like whatever, I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
Some old lady rambling, but
Yeah.
it's really nice when you just sit and listen to it. And you got like a nice piano in the background. It's just really soothing and it's like again, it's one of those moments that kind of gives you hope where it's like, you know, the way that she talks about this guy and like how everyone respected him and how like he was really admired and that's what really drew her to him.
Hmm.
And I thought it was beautiful to listen to honestly. And you know, as a society, I feel like old people in general we don't really appreciate enough because like these are people that have done it, right? Like they figured it out. All the answers that we want They have, for the most part. And I feel like a lot of, especially in America, I think older people in other um, cultures are more appreciated. But in
Hmm.
America, we kind of just like we'll throw them on Medicare and they can sit in their house the
Yeah,
rest of their life. You know, it
yeah,
kind of feels like that's how a lot of old people are treated. So it's kind of nice, like, to hear this story because there's so many people that have stories like this that can really make you feel like a good, give you a good feeling.
yeah.
And it's kind of too bad that we don't hear that as much as we do. But it was nice for Mac to give his grandma a little few minutes on the spotlight.
Yeah, and it's a perfect bow tie to the album. I think it's not just one of those things where he kind of threw it in there, but it fits the album as a whole really well. And so before we move on to swimming, I just wanted to ask you your last kind of thoughts to Divine Feminine, especially in the context of moving on to his next album.
I mean, it was just really really good. It was, as I mentioned to you earlier this week, it's an interesting album because literally every album he has made has been like an hour 15 minutes.
Hmm.
And this was a 10-song 50-minute album
Hmm.
where you just fly through it. I mean, I sat down in my car to go play golf and it was like over. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
Like, I was, it just, you fly through it. And it really hits though. It's like a shorter album, but it really hits. And as you mentioned, like, it really paints a picture of more hope and this being his best place in life.
yeah,
It's like after years of battling things and making music about those things, we finally see a consistent theme of love and happess. And
hmm,
I thought it was a really nice addition to his discography, which early on was just like all fun and games. And
hmm,
then he had that little low point where the music was so good, but it was heartbreaking at the same time.
yeah,
And Divine Feminine, I think, was the perfect mix of everything where you can tell that he's awesome as a musician at this point and also that he's happy.
yeah, absolutely.